I would like to welcome all Coastal Lakes College teachers, students and parents to our 2024 ANZAC ceremony. We would like to extend our welcome to the following special guests who are in attendance. Amber Kearns, City Councillor East Ward and Councillor Zolani. Kevin Fowler, representing the City of Mandurah RSL, and his wife Kay Fowler. Chief Petty Officer Tamara Prinz, representing the Royal Australian Navy. Officer Cadet Brady Morris, representing the Western Australian University Regiment. Officer Cadet Adit DeWivio, I'm so sorry, representing the Western Australian University Regiment. Nick Benson, Mark Skinner and Beth Winnett, Coastal Lakes College board members. I would like to ask Owen King to the stage to perform the acknowledgement of country.
Hello, welcome here to Coastal Lakes College. We acknowledge this as the land we are living on. We acknowledge the Pinjarra elders of the past and present.
I would like to welcome our acting principal, Mr. Cook, to the stage for his welcome address.
Good morning, special guests, parents, staff and students. This morning we gather as one to commemorate ANZAC Day, to honour the many brave men and women who served Australia in times of war and peace. ANZAC Day is a day to remember and to reflect upon the great sacrifice that our servicemen and women have made for our country, for our protection, for our freedom and for the Australian way of life that we all continue to enjoy today. We pay our respects to the many service people who have been injured or who have lost their lives serving our country. We also acknowledge the many families who have lost a father, a mother, a sister, a brother or a friend in the name of service to our great country and to all Australians. ANZAC Day is also a time to remember the incredible courage and bravery of our World War I and World War II veterans, as well as the resilience and selflessness of today's current servicemen and women, one of whom we will hear from shortly today. On the 25th of April 1915, a group of volunteer Australian and New Zealand soldiers found themselves wading ashore before dawn at a small beach on the Gallipoli Peninsula in Turkey, now known as ANZAC Cove. They were members of the Australian and New Zealand Army Corps and called themselves the ANZACs. Many of these men were only teenagers, some as young as 14, the same age as many of our students sitting before me today. These young men were keen to prove as representatives of our country that they could fight with great courage and resoluteness, able to compete against soldiers much older, more experienced than themselves from more established countries in Europe. For 8 months after the first landings, the young ANZACs underwent the most treacherous and traumatic ordeal, with over 36,000 Australian and New Zealand soldiers killed or wounded in Gallipoli. In that terrible battle at Gallipoli, in the hospitals, the camps, the ANZACs earned a reputation for courage, resilience, selflessness and mateship. The experience drew Australians together as a nation and helped to shape our national identity today. Our ANZACs paved the way, setting standards for all soldiers, sailors and airmen who followed them in the First World War and all the wars that have since followed. It is these great qualities of courage, resilience, selflessness and mateship that we continue to see in all of our servicemen and women today. The culmination of these qualities has come to be known as the ANZAC spirit. To honour our ANZACs means to not only reflect on the many sacrifices they have made for us, but to continue to demonstrate the ANZAC spirit in our everyday lives and in our pursuits at school, at work and in our community. Today, as we commemorate our ANZACs and all of our past and present servicemen and women, may their courage, their service, their sacrifice continue to be a source of inspiration for us all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cook. I would now like to ask Chief Petty Officer Tamara Prince to the stage to address the Assembly.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen and students of Coastal Lakes. Firstly, it is an honour to speak with you here today, Coastal Lakes. A very good friend of mine, Nicole, Mrs. Lovelace, being a teacher here, makes it even more special for me, so thank you. Okay, so this time last year, it was my wife that was standing up here talking to you while she was at home looking after our two young sons, and I was deployed overseas. This year, she is deployed and I am here speaking with you today. In case you are wondering, it is harder to look after two toddlers than it is to deploy overseas with the Navy. My name is Tam Prince, and I'm a Chief Petty Officer, Physical Training Instructor in the Royal Australian Navy. I enlisted while I was working and travelling through the United States of America. I was ready to come home, but I was not ready to fall into the 9 till 5 job. How can I work and still travel? I joined the Navy. So for the past 15 years, I've been working and travelling. This has included international operational deployments, representing the Australian Defence Force in AFL, basketball, soccer, and triathlons. Just a hot tip, I am not good at triathlons, but the rest I was pretty good at. I have been to countries that I didn't know existed. I've been to countries that can hardly be identified on a map. I've been to places that I would like to visit again. I've been to places I've always wanted to visit, and I've been to places that I absolutely do not ever want to go again. A career highlight for me was on board HMAS Melbourne. We were serving in the Middle East. We were in the thick of the war in Afghanistan, and we were intercepting billions and dollars worth of drugs. That was ultimately funding the war. So if you're wondering how the Navy contributes to the war in Afghanistan back then, that was an element. During that 7-month deployment, we intercepted 9 Somali pirates. We captured them on board. And to not keep you here for the next 3 hours, you can look the rest of that up on Google. The concerning part about my career is every ship that I have been on has decommissioned, retired, sunk, made for scrap metal, sold to another country, except for one. Either way, my time in the Navy has been something I'm very proud of, especially on days like today. If I can leave you with one message, it is that we must continue to learn about our military history. It is without a doubt why we are all here today. In saying that, we must continue to acknowledge the constant efforts our defence is undergoing every single day. It may not always make the news. In fact, it may never make the news. However, we are busier than we have ever been before. So please, if you know a uniformed member, or if you see one particularly in the next day or two, remember to thank them for allowing us to live in this peaceful country. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Petty Officer Tamara Prince. I'd like to ask Officer Cadet Morris to the stage to address the Assembly.
Good morning, everyone, distinguished guests, staff, students, and mums and dads at home. My speech is a little bit more formal in the sense that I championship, that shared sense of duty and sacrifice that sustained the ANZACs through the darkest hours of their battles. It's knowing and having a self-belief that you can achieve your goals, no matter how hard it may seem at the time, and no matter how great the sacrifice might seem. Inspire. Be inspired by the selflessness and the value that those that gave their lives in service of our country have shown to us. They would hope that the outcome of their actions will inspire you to display the courage to achieve your best, to maintain your integrity, and through service, protect the rights and the freedoms of everyone else. This way, you will inspire others to achieve greatness in their lives. And achieve. As keepers of the tradition, you should pledge to uphold and pass on to future generations the values of the ANZACs. We can do this through our own lives by drawing strength from the examples that they provided. And then when we have a chance to successfully face a challenge ourselves, we will overcome it. A couple of real-life stories to explain and give an example of this. Almost 83 years ago to the day, one amazing ANZAC did this. His name was Corporal John Hurst Edmondson. He was the first Australian to receive the Victoria Cross in World War II. The Victoria Cross is our highest acknowledgement or military honour, and unfortunately it's normally only ever awarded posthumously, which means that someone has had to die. He performed amazingly during the battles of Tobruk. Tobruk is a place in North Africa. The story is as follows. On the night of the 13th of April in 1941, German soldiers surrounded Tobruk, a key Allied embattlement in North Africa. German soldiers broke through the Australian wire defences, and they were armed with heavy machine guns and mortars. They were a sizable force. Under heavy fire, Edmondson joined 5 other privates and his commanding officer, Lieutenant Osternackle. They had to imagine how they were going to overcome this German attack. So they decided, definitely something I would never choose to do, to charge with bayonets. During the charge, Edmondson was seriously wounded in the neck and the stomach, but he continued his fight, believing in his ability to succeed and win. At this point, the German soldier began to attack his commanding officer from behind. Edmondson, despite being severely injured, went to aid his commanding officer, saving his life. Edmondson's selflessness inspired those around him not to give up. The Australian forces then continued the battle until they successfully repelled that enemy attack, saving Tobruk from defeat. Sadly, shortly after returning behind enemy lines, Edmondson succumbed to his wounds to die. Also today, in a little-known war called the Forgotten War, Korea. Today, actually, itself is the anniversary of a famous battle called the Battle of Kapyong. During that battle, the 3rd Royal Australian Regiment of infantry soldiers, numbered 700 men, faced off and defeated 25,000 Chinese, reinforcements were backed by the Chinese at the time, 25,000 Chinese, and they defended their position and saved Seoul from being conquered for the final time. It is these kind of examples, and there are many of them, that we should never forget. So let you never forget the debt of gratitude that we owe to people like these and many others who have served and continue to serve our nation. May their strength of character continue for generations to come. And when you're standing there tomorrow, hopefully, at a local ANZAC parade or celebration, it should motivate you to be the best person that you can be. As you imagine, believe, inspire, and achieve your goals, which will honour them. Thank you. Let's be together.
Thank you, Officer Cadet Morris. I would like to invite the college captains to the stage to read the ANZAC poems.
In silence we gather, hearts heavy yet proud, for those who stood tall in conflict unbowed. Their courage remembered in every way. On ANZAC Day we honour come what may.
In Flanders field, the poppies blow between the crosses, row on row, that mark our place, and in the sky, the larks still bravely singing, fly. Scarce heard amid the guns below, we are the dead, short days ago. We lived, felt dawn, saw sunset glow, loved, and we were loved, and now we lie in Flanders field. Take up our quarrel with the foe, to you from the failing hands we throw. The torch be yours to hold it high, if ye break faith with us who die. We shall not sleep through poppies grow in Flanders field.
I would like to ask the following special guests to lay the wreaths. Mr. Cook and Miss Fogarty. Miss Ron and Miss Watson. Emma Kearns, Councillor Ahmed Zalani, and Chief Petty Officer Tamara Prince. Mr. Kevin Fowler and Mrs. Kay Fowler. Officer Cadet Ade Durborough and Officer Cadet Brady Ross. And our board members.
the Assembly perform the oath.
Good morning, invited guests, teachers, students, and those watching on the TV. As the RSL historian, I used to give details of battles that took place in this year number. You may have been talking about them in class. 110 years ago, on the 28th of June 1914, World War I commenced. And on the 1st of November 1914, the first fleet of Australian and New Zealand troops sailed in 46 ships from Albany and 10 from Fremantle to go to Egypt. 80 years ago, on the 6th of June 1944, D-Day, 175,000 troops from many countries, including 2,214 Australians, landed in France by ship or air. On the 12th of June 1944, the Japanese fleet was defeated in the sea battle of the Marianas. On the 13th of June 1944, Germany started using their B-1 flying bombs on London. On the 9th of September 1944, the first B-2 rocket landed in London. Between the 20th and 26th of October 1944, the largest sea battle in history took place at Leyte Gulf, Philippines. And 60 years ago, in November 1964, the Second National Service, who were called NASHOs, in Australia commenced. 210 Australian NASHOs were killed in action in the Vietnam War. However, this morning I would like to ask the 14 and 15-year-old boys, are you willing to go to war? In the early 1900s and up to 1960, boys and girls could leave school after their 14th birthday, and many did this as they were required to help their parents on their farms or in their shops. This work was hard manual labour. They would have grown up listening to the stories from the soldiers who had fought in the Boer War in Africa, which ended in 1902, and these men then fought in the First World War. When World War I commenced, and the local talk was that it would all be over by Christmas, many young men left their jobs and enlisted. This included 14 and 15-year-old boys who put their ages up because they didn't want to miss out on the fun and adventure, and it included sea voyages to Egypt and Europe. I'd like to mention 3 such boys